Los Angeles, a city of dazzling lights and soaring aspirations, also harbors deep-seated pain and stark realities. Between the glittering landmarks and the forgotten backstreets, much remains unseen. As dawn paints the sky with vibrant hues, the city shimmers. But beneath the surface, in the shadows, untold stories linger. It is there, in the most neglected corners of the city, that a nameless canine wanders. He is known only as Phantom. He has no owner, no companions, no place to call his own. He roams the streets, a solitary figure, his eyes reflecting a silent melancholy, as if burdened by an invisible weight. His right paw, always concealed, holds a secret. Each step he takes is a struggle. He walks with difficulty as if his entire being is too weary to continue. Yet, no one notices, no one cares. He is simply another invisible dog, drifting through a city that fails to see him, oblivious to his pain. He knows something is amiss, but he lacks the means to articulate his needs. He is a specter, a shadow, a solitary soul in a world that ignores him. The dog seemed to blend into the city's fabric, always traversing the same routes without attracting attention. He sought nothing, merely observed the ebb and flow of people. Mark Stevens' Market, the cozy cafe on the corner, and the shadowy alleyways where sunlight never penetrated were all part of his routine. But one day, something unusual occurred. The dog, as if sensing a change, emerged from his hiding place and abruptly halted before a man. Ryan Gosling, the actor, was strolling down the sidewalk when he suddenly noticed the dog standing there, gazing at him intently. Taken aback, Ryan stopped and, for a moment, simply observed the animal. The dog, who typically avoided eye contact, now slowly approached and offered a soft bark, as if trying to gain his attention. Ryan slowly crouched down, sensing that something was unfolding. He extended his hand, attempting to connect with the dog, and unlike his interactions with others, the dog didn't flee. He looked Ryan in the eyes, as if finally encountering someone who could perceive his suffering. Just then, a gruff voice from a man broke the spell. "Are you interested in the dog?" inquired Mark Stevens, the market owner. His voice carried a note of disdain, as if he couldn't fathom why anyone would pay heed to such a scruffy creature. "I don't know what you see in him. He's just a nuisance," the man reiterated. Ryan looked at him, trying to decipher Mark's coldness, but before he could respond, the man continued with a bitter smile. "He's worthless. He just wanders around, rubbing against people, trying to elicit attention. If you're looking for a dog, he's definitely not the one. He's filthy and probably diseased." Ryan felt a strange mix of compassion and indignation. He knew the dog possessed something more, something that Mark would never comprehend. He wanted to retort with more words, but instead he calmly approached the man. "Sometimes, suffering is so deeply concealed that people choose to ignore it," Ryan said, his voice gentle yet imbued with a subtle sorrow. Mark, however, remained unmoved by Ryan's words. He took a step back with a gesture of impatience. "Look, my job here is to sell, not to care for sick dogs. If you want to help that animal, go ahead, but don't expect me to care." The tone was so harsh that Ryan felt a chill. His heart grew heavy with sadness and empathy for the animal, imagining how it must feel to be in such an environment, treated so inhumanely. Mark persisted. "It's not my problem, and it's not anyone's. If I were you, I'd just leave him here. If he dies, it won't change anything." Ryan remained silent for a moment, absorbing the cruelty in those words. Mark's indifference was like a wall of ice, impenetrable and bitter. I will do what I can for him," Ryan said, his voice stronger now, like a promise. The dog, for a brief moment, revealed his paw. Ryan saw it, and what he saw left him stunned. A tumor, subtle but undeniably present. Desperate, Ryan rushed the dog to a trusted veterinarian as quickly as possible. After a thorough examination, the diagnosis was alarming. The dog had a rare tumor, likely caused by exposure to chemicals, something that hinted at a darker story than he had imagined. "It's a miracle he survived this long," said the vet, "but treatment is possible if we act fast." The question lingered in the air. Where had the dog come from? Who had subjected him to something so cruel? As Ryan investigated further, he made a discovery that changed everything. The dog had been part of an experiment in a clandestine lab. He hadn't been abandoned, but used as part of a cruel research project. The suffering he had endured was the result of something far more horrific than Ryan could have imagined. And there was more. Michael, Mark's son, had worked in that lab. Somehow, he was connected to all of this. Ryan didn't want to be just a spectator in this story. He couldn't stand by, watching a dog who had suffered so much. He wanted to change Phantom's fate, and at the same time, change how people perceived these animals. He organized fundraising campaigns, cared for the dog, and began raising his voice against animal experimentation cruelty. The dog, now named Phoenix, became a symbol of more than just a fight for life. He was proof that even in suffering, there is an invisible strength that can transform us. He was an example of resilience, showing the world that even the deepest wounds can heal if we give them a chance. With treatment, Phoenix survived. The tumor was removed, but the story of his pain would never be forgotten. Mark, who had once seen the dog as a burden, now saw him as the last connection to his lost son. He became for Mark not a weight, but a living reminder of a love that had never disappeared. Ryan, always believing that the deepest stories reside in the things left unsaid, knew that true transformation lay in listening. It was in seeing what no one else wanted to see. Every life matters, Ryan said in an interview, his eyes full of meaning. Every story matters, even if it's not told in words. Phoenix wasn't just a dog. He became a symbol of resilience, of memories that endure, and the invisible connections between humans and animals. He taught us that sometimes the greatest transformation comes from where we least expect it, from those who are in silence, cast aside by society. Pay attention to what isn't said, Ryan concluded, looking at the Los Angeles sky, where the stars were beginning to shine. Sometimes what isn't spoken is what matters most. Be the hero of a story that needs to be told. See beyond the obvious. Listen to the silence, because sometimes what isn't spoken is what matters most.